Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video with myself and Mike today, discussing something that could potentially be quite exciting for the club. It's probably long overdue with the training ground at Rush Green at the moment and how we're currently operating as a football club. It looks like we're trying to develop that. And again, there's links with a move to Basildon to kind of develop things there in terms of the training facilities and move away from Rush Green, which, let's be honest, isn't fit for a Premier League team of our status now to be operating. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago we were replacing signs with upside down W's. And yeah, it's just, it probably epitomizes everything to do with West Ham as a football club that we know it as. So, Mike, what's your initial kind of thoughts on the potential move away from Rush Green and obviously developing into a new training ground? And do you think that's a step in the right direction from the club? I mean, it's probably long overdue as well.
But it's one small leap for West Ham, one giant leap for the fan base and players. Let's be honest, it's long overdue. It's been an embarrassment, our training facilities, shall we say. And I don't think West Ham are doing this on a whim. I don't think this is something that David Sullivan has all of a sudden decided after nearly 13 years at West Ham. And after a very proud declaration by the late David Gold about spending £10 million on training facilities, which essentially works out as, at that point, £1 million per year that they'd been there. And at that stage, our facilities were always already miles and miles behind others. There's no way there is not other things happening behind the scenes for West Ham to all of a sudden said, right, we now need to go and buy acres and acres of land to then go and do state-of-the-art training facilities, unless there are other things coming in the pipeline. And, you look around clubs like Liverpool, for instance, recently spent around about £50 million on their training facilities. Bournemouth, prior to them get relegated previously, we're looking at about £40 million spending on new training facilities. Leicester, as we know, spent £100 million on training facilities. I know many people go, well, what difference does it make? That team, two of those teams got relegated, and they were looking to spend money. So, Liverpool, blah, blah. It's the point of, if you act professional, you look professional, you become professional. West Ham have been a bit of a kind of hooker by crook club for so long, as you say. A couple of weeks ago, we had an upside down W that was even in the wrong shade being put on to kind of replace an M at the training ground. So
yeah, it's building blocks, isn't it? Because when you're looking at, especially, I think this is also a question maybe I wanted to ask around the tight restrictions and point deductions and sanctions for FFP right now. You can actually invest in your infrastructure, away from that. So do you think maybe that shift into kind of, again, the training ground facilities away from the transfer side of things has maybe prompted that due to the FFP regulations that are now being strictly, placed upon clubs like Everton and Forest?
Yeah, I think ultimately the realization, and I'm not putting this down to our current board all of a sudden having a come to Jesus moment and realizing they can spend money and then wanting to spend money, because quite frankly, it would have been done before. I think it would be naive to then say all of a sudden they've changed their colours and they're looking to make West Ham look like a top tier team off the pitch. I just don't. That doesn't wash for me. If that's a viewpoint of others, fair play, all power to you. But for me, that is just not what's happening.
Yeah, I think as well it kind of coincides with, obviously, last summer when Tim Steidten arrived. We kind of sat here on this channel saying it's actually quite a big moment for the club in terms of those kind of building blocks of what we want to progress in terms of a football club, whether it's through consistent European football or, like you say, you have to develop in the right ways. You have to act or, behave in a way that's big clubbish, as kind of silly as that sounds. But, we can't continue to operate a training ground that's, let's be honest, is probably League One standard.
We bought it from, I think, was it Grays we bought it from at the time? So again, we bought it from non-league football. That was, I believe, part of their stadium, and it was essentially their stadium, and then the grounds around it. It's in a green belt, so we can't develop on it. That's why we've been doing the porter cabins, because we can't essentially do actual structures unless, because it's green belt, unless it has a community benefit. Essentially, you're really restricted. So we've got 2 separate grounds in Chadwell Heath, which obviously is our, I guess our spiritual home in terms of what, where we used to train, the youth players that have come through there over the years, etc. But it just makes sense to do something like what Liverpool have done, where they've got one big complex which caters for both the men's team and the youth team. I'm not sure whether the women's team there, but again, great if it is. But one of the reasons that they've done that is that they have this huge complex that incorporates both sets, and they've also cornered off the men's team, and so it is completely separate. However, what they've done is done it in a way to kind of say to the young players as to, you're training in the same place. Literally, you are aiming to be over there. And it gives them a consistent daily reminder as to what they're aiming for and what they're working for. And it's been a big reason why, Klopp's been able to introduce these youngsters, because he's been able to just walk over and see what's going on. Probably even has a window or an observation piece that looks directly out over that. And it's that connection that you can create, as well as keeping that kind of segmentation or segregation that you kind of want, because you want to kind of have it aspirational as to, you can't go there. That's off limits until you're good enough. And it gives you that driver to want to get to that other side and to get there. And if you go there, you come back and you tell the other young players and the other young lads, it's amazing over there, And it's that driver. And I think it's something we need to do. We need to bring the whole club together. We constantly talk about we're the Academy of Football. And obviously the women's team with what that is, and I think the women's team train at Rush Green potentially as well. So again, just bringing the whole club together is something that I think we need. We need this unified, I guess, approach. And also, again, it just brings that kind of element of, it's one club, it's one kind of philosophy, and then that philosophy can then be brought through, and you bring players up through the youth ranks and then move them over into, your first team. And I think it just kind of creates a bit more of an impactful thing for young players as well, because you actually get to see what you're working towards daily. If you don't have the motivation to get there, then you're never going to make it. And I think that's the great thing about it.
I think as well, looking at it from, like you mentioned, there's probably more to it than meets the eye. It's not just us trying to develop, or David Sullivan, looking at developing. Back in 2021, we were actually trying to get like a proposal accepted or granted to improve the Rush Green facilities. That fell through, and then that's a few years ago now. I don't think David Sullivan would be in a situation where he's now, okay, let's go somewhere completely fresh. I think we're going to touch it on another video, but there's more to it than just we're developing a training ground. I think it's kind of symbolic of a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes right now. And there's a lot of change going on. And I think this summer is going to be huge for, I think we said it 3 summers in a row on this channel, but this summer is actually going to be massive for this football club. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this. I mean, it would be amazing to get some new, modern facilities that aren't filled with kind of lots of porta cabins and upside down W's on signs. But yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction if we do make it happen. As you say, it kind of brings that cohesive integration between the youth team and the first team, and giving them that extra incentive or drive to make it into that first team and go train with the squad. So hopefully we do make something come from it. Obviously, the plans are right now to be building in Basildon. So that'll be interesting to see. Is that's still kind of Essex area. And yeah, I think it will be interesting to see whether this goes through and what happens and who the main driver behind this is. I think that will be interesting to see if that comes out as well, which I'm sure it will do behind the scenes. So yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about the training ground saga around the facilities. Are you excited by the new prospect? Do you think it will actually happen? And do you think it kind of signifies more than just a slight change of training ground facilities and maybe something a little bit bigger picture behind the scenes? So yeah, let us know in the comments. Leave a like on the video as always, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Mike, until next time, come on, you irons.